Okay, everybody, we know it's been a long day. We're going to try to go through the first half of this pretty quickly. At the end, we have a couple case studies. Specifically, we have a buyback letter from Freddie Mac and a response that was produced by myself. And we have a buyback letter from Fannie Mae and a response that was produced by Tom. Because we think that really the case studies is where you're going to find the greatest benefit from what we're about to show you this afternoon. A lot of the other stuff we're going to cover you've probably heard before, but just to set some foundation for everything, there's a lot of different definitions of what an appraisal review is in the industry. To us as appraisers, we have to comply with what USPAP is based on our licensure. And of course, that simply is the act or process of developing or communicating an opinion about the quality of another appraiser's work that was performed as part of an appraisal review, in other words, you can review a review, or appraisal consulting assignment. For us, an appraisal review, when a value conclusion is included, for all practical purposes, is the practice of appraisal.
And a lot of appraisers have a hard time understanding, so when you get a review assignment out there, and if you're rendering that value opinion, you're actually doing an appraisal assignment. So real important to make that distinction and recognize that you're actually doing an appraisal. Now, according to FDIC, you know, their policy is that a review of valuation information is an essential component of sound credit administration and is mandated by Dodd-Frank. Now, I'll make a point there, it's mandated by Dodd-Frank. It doesn't say a percentage of appraisals have to be reviewed. All appraisals have to be reviewed there. And reviewing appraisals before engaging in a loan transaction ensures the value conclusion is reliable. It's critical to understand there's two types of appraisal reviews. Now, you're probably most familiar with, and show of hands, how many of you in here are full-time review appraisers? Okay. How many of you in here are just solely commercial appraisers? Okay. So some of this you'll be able to apply from a commercial side if you're getting reviewed, but this is really focused more on the residential side. And so the two types, you have your administrative review, and really what this is a review for completeness. So you're just making sure that the report contains all the necessary information for the particular client. The second one is your standard 3 review. Essentially what you have above is you're doing a review for real estate and you're doing a review of an appraisal. And there's no difference between an appraisal and an appraisal review when it comes to quality, condition, and opinion of value.
Now, the primary focus of this is to determine how do you handle it when you get a negative review. And if any of you have been in the industry as long as Tom and I have, it's going to happen. You're going to get that negative review passed over to you. And there's different ways that the reviews can come. The first one, of course, is as desk review, which seemed to be the quick, slick, easy, fast way to throw a review out there. Sometimes the ones that are done the most quickly. You got to watch some of the forms that are out there and being used. Sometimes they're looking for a value conclusion on the bottom after they've basically done what Tom called an administrative review. But these appraisers are throwing an opinion down there as to whether they agree, disagree with you. And if they agree, by the way, they're making an opinion of value, but they're not putting any support in there. So they fall short on that. You can't just throw a number on it and say, yes, I agree or I disagree with the appraiser, mark it fair and send it back for more data. Next. And then field review, which is the other one that takes a little bit more time, and it's probably a much more in-depth report. You guys are familiar with the 2000 series forms that Fannie and Freddie both use, and we'll be covering some of those a little bit later in the presentation. For the most part, that's an appraiser going out into the field, inspecting the property from at least the street, driving by the comparables, and definitely having the ability to understand a little bit more about what you saw when you went out into the property.
As far as the two types again, you know, you have your quality control review here, which is also referred to as an administrative review. And the reason why I asked how many of you out here are full-time review appraisers, or if you're a staff review appraiser for a bank or a lender or an AMC, many times who you may work for, they may not know the difference between what a quality control review is, administrative review, a standard 3 review, and when they can use them and when they shouldn't use them. So, you know, that's why it's important that why we're covering these definitions here, is so you know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Now, with my firm, You know, we pretty much do a combination of both of the reviews. We do the quality control or administrative, and then we'll do a technical or a quality assurance review. Now, the quality assurance review here, you're checking everything. You're doing data verification in here, and you're checking value opinions and value conclusions. And if the review appraiser disagrees, then they have to develop their own opinion of value. Next step, and this is what we're seeing the biggest trend in the last 4 years, is your forensic review. And they're commonly referred to as your retrospective forensic reviews. Okay, and this is where an appraiser has done an appraisal, the loan's been sold off, back whether it's Fannie or Freddie, whoever ended up with it, and now they're looking to find someone to repurchase that, that loan amount and make them whole. And so Fannie Mae sends the repurchase demand over to the funder and the originator, and they say, buy back this loan, and this is why. And it's solely based on a valuation investigation piece and a credit investigation piece together as a whole that makes the repurchase demand. And at this point, this is when you may receive a letter from or a call from the originator or the funder, whoever you may have done that appraisal for, and they're going to ask you to comment on this repurchase demand. And this is when it starts getting tricky. So a forensic review basically requires somebody to go back in time. And anytime you're going back in time and you're researching, it becomes a forensic review because you're interviewing, you're applying extra due diligence throughout the course of your review of that file. They like you to physically inspect it in person when possible, and really the overall result of these forensic reviews is to evaluate the credibility of the origination appraisal for fraudulent actions, misrepresentation for loan eligibility, compliance to state, federal guidelines, and was it developed in accordance to USPAP. Now, one thing you might not know is Fannie Mae doesn't care about USPAP, believe it or not. So when they get a repurchase demand letter in there, they never state that the appraiser violated USPAP. They're always saying that the appraisal violated the Fannie Mae selling guide, and the LTV and the loan-to-value ratio was different, and so therefore the property was ineligible.
Okay. Do you or do you not have to hold a license in a particular state if you're doing a review appraisal of a property in that state? Right now, more and more states are moving towards having that type of language put into their acts. If you're not sure, and you're working, let's say, for a major review company like one of Tom's franchises, you better make sure that you check with the state before you start doing an appraisal review, not administrative or technical, but where you're going to have to make a determination on the value conclusion. You might have to be licensed in that state. Currently, there's 13 jurisdictions that have no requirements if you're doing a review, and I believe New Jersey is one of them at this time. Right? Wouldn't you guys all agree? You're all here from New Jersey. You guys don't have to hold a license to? Okay. You're one of the 13, but that number is getting smaller and smaller every couple of months. There's 9 states that require a reviewer to be licensed in a state regardless whether the reviewer provides an opinion of value or not. So if you're just doing an administrative technical review in these particular states, you have to hold a license. So they don't even want to hear about what's wrong with the report unless you're licensed. There's 28 states, including ours in Illinois, where you can do administrative reviews, but once you start going down the path to an opinion of value, you have to hold a license. So if you're in any of these states and you get a review, like if I was in Illinois, and it happens a lot in our state, the first thing the reviewer does, I usually get an email or a phone call saying, I have a review here that was done by a guy, he's from Ohio, but he's not licensed in Illinois. Is he allowed to do that? And my answer is no. You can stop right now. You can tell your client this review has been performed illegally in the state of Illinois and turn them into the state. Not that I promote turning a lot of appraisers into the state, but you have to understand, and you're probably seeing what's happening in the industry, there's a big push right now from the GSEs on this retrospective stuff. And they're not doing it for stuff that was appraised a year ago. They're going back as far as they can, 4 years and 11 months. And they're turning them into the state, or they're shipping them back to the lender. And we'll get into it in a little bit as to whether or not you should or shouldn't keep your records beyond 5 years. It's really, you know, you can flip a coin on that, but they're going back a ways. And because they're going back a ways, there's plenty of places you can catch this reviewer in doing things incorrectly, which we're going to touch on in a few minutes here.